The movie opens with a father and daughter's climb to Troll Peaks. After climbing, the father, Tobias, reminds his daughter, Nora, of the fairy tale about trolls. He then tells her that the great mountain in front of them is actually made from fossilized trolls. At first, Nora does not believe this because she thinks it is just a silly fairy tale. But when the sun shines upon the great mountain, she sees the trolls' faces on it, surprising her. 20 years later, a group of archaeologists is excavating near the sea in search of dinosaur bones. Nora, now a professor of paleontology, is part of this group. She has been told by her teammate that the university is cutting off their funding due to finding no dinosaurs, but Nora refuses to give up. Luckily, she manages to dig some dinosaur bones at this exact moment, which delights her and her teammates. Meanwhile, in Troll Peak Mountain, a group of miners is creating a tunnel through it as a passageway for their subway project. As such, nearby, some protesters urge them to stop because what they are doing will spoil the beautiful mountains. The miners then use some powerful dynamite to prove to the protesters that they cannot be stopped. After the miners get inside the tunnel to check the result of the explosion, it suddenly rumbles and collapses, killing them instantly. Just then, the Norwegian military senses this strong activity from Troll Peaks Mountain and sends some planes to scout what is happening. Upon seeing a big hole in the mountain, the general immediately alerts the Prime Minister about the situation. Aside from the big hole they have found, the Prime Minister is also informed about the gigantic footprints that are found near it. For this reason, they have no choice but to gather the best scientists that can help them identify the origin of the hole and the footprints. One of these people they recruit is Nora, who is currently celebrating with her team for finding valuable dinosaur bones. Immediately, the military takes her back to the capital via helicopter so that she can be briefed about what happened. There, she meets Andreas, the advisor for the Prime Minister, who quickly takes her inside the dim conference room full of generals, scientists, and other professionals. Since Nora is a professor of paleontology, her expertise is also useful for the meeting. However, some scientists mock her because they think all she knows is dinosaurs. After that, other scientists start to theorize about the holes, but Nora notices that they obviously look like footprints. Again, they mock her because there are no creatures that large that can produce such footprints. Here, an intelligence officer, Sigrid, enters the conference room to show the footage from the earlier mining disaster, where they confirm that it is indeed a creature that has caused all of this. Despite the footage, the other scientists still believe it is not a creature. But Nora is feisty as she wants to make a move immediately rather than just discussing if it is true or not. Because the Prime Minister likes her attitude, Nora is assigned as a scientific advisor. She is then told by Andreas that they will have to go to a valley due to a recent incident involving an elderly couple's house. Earlier, an elderly couple has a scary close encounter with the creature when their house gets stepped on by it, although they have not seen it with their own eyes. As such, Nora and Andreas head there immediately via helicopter. To pass the time, Andreas talks to her about her interest in paleontology, which she says comes from her childhood love of nature. She then tells him her mother had already died and that her father has lost his mind at some point in his life due to believing too much in fairy tales. Andreas then admits that he always wants to be a writer, but Nora is not listening anymore because she sees the elderly couple's house in ruins. A soldier, Chris, briefs them about what happened. He tells them that the creature walked in the region and then suddenly stopped south, which is miles away from their location. Afterward, the three of them head to a tent to interview the traumatized elderly couple. The old man reveals that the recent incident felt like a mountain was moving toward their direction, and his wife adds that she heard a sad-sounding howl emanating from this moving mountain. After taking the elderly couple's testimonies, the three head outside to continue their investigation of the place. There, Nora checks the footprint using UV light to see if the creature has left a biological imprint. However, she sees nothing but rocks and stones. They then head south to where the footprints are said to have suddenly stopped. While inside the helicopter, the soldier tells Nora that the footprints stopped in a rocky location which is impossible because the creature is too big to just disappear like magic. All of the details do not add up and have only confused Nora so far. For this reason, she asks them to go to his father. As such, they head to a small cabin in the middle of nowhere where an old, unkempt man greets them with a shotgun and a threat. It turns out to be Tobias, and after realizing that it is his daughter, he lowers his gun and lets them in. Inside the disorderly abode, Andreas notices the various newspaper clippings that are posted on the wall. While Tobias attempts to discuss their content, Nora quickly informs him that something came out of the mountain today. She shows him the footage from the earlier mining disaster, informing him that they have tried to follow the footprints, but it leads nowhere. She then asks him if he can provide a scientific explanation for this without resorting to fairy tales and myths. But Tobias goes into a tirade that these are all solid proofs that support the existence of trolls, which the government has tried to suppress and hide. Tobias then asks to come with them for an adventure, and Nora has no choice but to have her father join them because she needs his help. As such, they head back to the end of the trail of footprints, where Tobias eagerly looks around for any clue that will confirm the troll's existence. Upon checking the area, he then tells his daughter that the landscape has changed based on the map. While they are close to each other, Tobias takes this opportunity to tell Nora that she has lost her childlike curiosity and wonder, prompting Nora to tell him that she has simply grown up. Suddenly, the father and daughter notice an eye popping out from the rocks. As it turns out, the rocky region where they are standing is actually just a resting troll in disguise, therefore proving that trolls do exist. After they speedily escape via helicopter, they immediately send the footage of the troll to the military, alarming the Prime Minister and her cabinet members. For this reason, Nora, Andreas, Chris, and Tobias head to a nearby base to discuss with the Prime Minister what they have seen via video call. Although Nora warns her father not to mention the word troll to describe the creature, Tobias still says it proudly to the Prime Minister's cabinet. He even tells them that their meddling with nature has caused its rampage. Not wanting to believe the old man, the Prime Minister decides to implement military action against the troll. Because of this, Nora reprimands her father for having another tirade about myths and fairy tales. Tobias then tells her that their adventure has just begun, which rekindles Nora's childlike curiosity. As such, Nora, Tobias, and Andreas urge Chris to let them come to the military operation. Due to their insistence, Chris agrees, but only if they will follow his orders. And so, the night military operation commences. While waiting for the troll's arrival, the father and daughter reconcile as they talk about the past before they fell apart. After a while of waiting, the troll finally arrives, but it stops in its tracks. The general then authorizes Chris to open fire against the stoned creature. After a rocket missile hits its body, the troll's wound supernaturally regenerates, thus only angering it more. As such, Chris orders all soldiers to attack with all they got. But seeing that their collective attack did not affect the troll, the soldiers started retreating. During the mayhem, Chris, Tobias, Nora, and Andreas hide behind an overturned tree stump alongside another soldier who is praying. Since the soldier is a Christian, Tobias tells the rest to leave the soldier behind. This is because trolls, according to legend, can smell people with Christian blood. As such, the troll quickly snatches the Christian soldier and eats him. But instead of fully running away, Tobias decides to befriend the giant creature, which he briefly manages to do. However, a stupid soldier attacks the monster from behind, and the gigantic creature becomes enraged again. In turn, the troll accidentally knocks Tobias away and attacks the soldier, firing at it before leaving. Tobias survives the impact, but is greatly weakened. He then cryptically tells his daughter about a king and his palace before finally succumbing to his injuries and dying. As a result, Nora cries her heart out for her father. Even Andreas and Chris are heartbroken by this. Soon after, Nora returns to the military base where she studies all of her father's notes until she falls asleep. The following day, Chris informs Nora that the troll has stopped again in another valley and they will conduct an airstrike against it. This confuses Nora because it seems that the military has not learned their lesson from last night. She tells them that there must be truth to all the fairy tales about trolls. As such, they inform the Prime Minister's cabinet about their plan to use mythology in handling the troll problem. One of the cabinet members finds this absurd. But Chris, a non-believer, surprisingly vouches for Nora's proposal because he had witnessed firsthand that modern weapons have no effect on the creature. In turn, the general has welcomed this suggestion because they have to explore all possible options. As such, the Prime Minister agrees to go with her plan. However, they receive news that the troll is moving toward an amusement park. Because of this, they quickly execute their plan to subdue the creature. The plan is to confuse the troll by attacking giant church bells on 4 helicopters because trolls hate the sound of church bells. For this reason, they manage to temporarily suppress the troll. However, they have not foreseen that it will eventually fight back. The troll proceeds to swiftly take down 3 helicopters. But despite being irritated, the disgruntled troll still helps innocent humans by stopping a helicopter from falling to people below. The troll then leaves the park instead of continuing its rampage. Due to this very public event, the news about the stone creature spread around the globe like wildfire, which embarrasses the Norwegian government. Since the troll is reported to the capital, the Prime Minister believes that it must be taken down immediately by force. Nora, however, is still firm in her belief that the troll must be handled by other means, but the Prime Minister does not listen to her. Seeing that no one else will listen to her except Chris and Andreas, Nora leaves the building. Without Nora, one of the Prime Minister's cabinet members suggests that they use nuclear weapons against the troll, even if it will destroy the city too. For this reason, Andreas resigns on the spot and quickly catches up to Nora to tell her about the capital's evacuation. Soon after, the Prime Minister herself announces in the news that she is declaring a state of emergency in the capital due to imminent danger. As such, people immediately leave the place. While Andreas and Nora are driving away from the capital, Nora is fixated on the word sinding, which is repeatedly written in her father's book. But she has no idea of the meaning. Andreas then tells her that it must be referring to the last name of the Lord Chamberlain that resides in the palace. Nora then remembers her father's words about a king and a palace. Upon realizing something, she tells Andreas to quickly turn back and head to the palace. They then arrive at the capital's palace, where the guards immediately point their guns at the two. Suddenly, an old gentleman named Sinding shows up and orders his men to stand down. He then tells Nora and Andreas that he has already anticipated a visitor for tonight and that he is surprised that it is Tobias's daughter. Sinding then lets the two inside the palace, where he reveals to Nora that he knew and respected Tobias very well, even though he was a stubborn man. While leading the two to a secret location somewhere in the palace, Sinding tells them that, according to history, this palace was actually built on the palace of the Troll King. In a shocking revelation, Nora and Andreas find out that under the palace stores enormous bones, which belong to the trolls killed by humans a long time ago. It turns out that the troll they encountered earlier is the Troll King himself, who was lured away from the palace during the period when Christianity was being spread. As such, the Troll King is simply heading back to his home, which is what Tobias had tried to tell his daughter before he died. According to Sinding, when Tobias was close to uncovering and exposing the truth, they threw him to a mental hospital to stop him. When Nora observes the bones with her UV light, she notices that the bones are burning. After concluding that the troll's weakness is direct sunlight, she then requests the largest vehicle that Sinding has. After getting the vehicle, she then calls Chris to help them with her plan, and he immediately agrees. Since they have everything they need, they formulate a plan which involves using a skull of one of the Troll King's kin to lure him away from the palace and into the nearby park. Chris, with the help of some of his soldier buddies, will then set up strong UV lights in the park, which will be used to subdue the gigantic creature. Meanwhile, the Troll King slowly but surely walks toward the palace, with soldiers trying their best to subdue him with all their attacks. Because their weapons do not affect the creature at all, the Prime Minister finally agrees with the use of nuclear weapons. And so, they swiftly proceed with their plan. While the military prepares the bomb, Sigrid informs Andreas about the devastating plan of the military. Andreas then tells her to buy them time, and she does it by hacking into the military system. Just in the nick of time, Sigrid manages to successfully hack the system, preventing the military from proceeding with the bombing. With the military out of the way, Nora and Andreas come face to face with the Troll King. At first, the creature passes them by as they drive toward him, but when the skull behind the vehicle is uncovered, the Troll King becomes enraged and chases them instead. While being chased, Nora calls Chris to finish their preparation in under 10 minutes because they are heading there fast. After the call, Chris delivers a rousing speech to his fellow soldiers that they should act fast to save their beloved capital. Meanwhile, Nora and Andreas are driving to a bridge when they drop the skull behind them. For a moment, the Troll King looks at the skull and himself with sadness in his eyes because he is the last of his kind. He then accidentally drops the skull to the ground and shatters it. In turn, the Troll King becomes even more infuriated with Nora and Andreas. For this reason, the behemoth continues his pursuit of the two. As this is happening, the cabinet member finds out that Sigrid is hacking their system, so the military quickly regains control of the bomb. Meanwhile, Nora and Andreas eventually reach the park where Chris and the rest of the soldiers are located. The angry Troll King swipes the car that Nora and Andreas are driving. Fortunately, the two manage to escape the vehicle before it is too late. With everything set, Chris and the soldiers open their UV lights. The bright lights are too much for the Troll King to handle, making him unable to move from his spot due to the stinging heat. Meanwhile, the military is about to bomb the creature when they spot Nora and the others nearby. For this reason, the general orders the pilot to abort the plan due to civilian presence. As the soldiers already celebrate their victory, Nora cannot help but feel pity for the dying creature. As such, she quickly closes the UV lights and tells the Troll King to leave immediately. But despite her best efforts to save the creature, morning light finally arrives, turning the Troll King into a large boulder. In honor of her father, Nora decides to call it Tobias Boulder. The Prime Minister and her staff immediately arrive at the scene to assess the Great Boulder. There, she admits to Nora that she is impressed by what Nora has achieved. Andreas then tells the Prime Minister that since he has resigned, he will now pursue his dream to be a writer. The movie ends with Andreas pondering if there are more trolls in the wild, making Nora smile as if she is ready for another adventure. During the credits, inside the cavern where the Troll King came, another movement occurs, followed by a great howl. The movie is great because it plays with the idea of the possibility of mythologies and fairy tales turning out to be true, which will eventually clash with our modern and scientific thinking. But I think the key message of the movie is that no matter what we do, nature will always strike back against us in one way or another. As such, we need to learn to understand and live with nature and not just attempt to subdue and destroy it to fulfill our demands.